Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
You're very welcome along to this week's episode of Friday Night Racing. It's Jerry Gilroy and Johnny Ward with you every Friday afternoon, bang on 3 o'clock on all of Off the Ball social channels, or of course it could well be 8:05 on Off the Ball on News Talk on a Friday evening. And that means one thing: we're talking to some of the biggest names about some of the biggest stories in the sport of racing. Johnny, good afternoon to you. How are you? On a dodgy line, Johnny, as always. How are you, Johnny? Good afternoon to you.
How are you, Ger? What's the crack?
Hey, there you are. Yeah, you're just asleep. That's okay.
What's going on?
Also with us this week, I'm delighted to say, is Jerry McGrath. Jerry, good afternoon to you. How are you getting on?
Hi, lads. Good to see you.
You're checking out some horses, I think. What, you're in the market for some and you're checking them out today. We're catching you on location.
Yeah, I'm actually at Cheltenham Racecourse at the moment, looking at the sales horses before they sell tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock.
How much detective work can you do the day before the sale? What are you looking for?
Well, I suppose before the sale, you obviously the catalogue comes out a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, whatever, just depending on the sales. But you'd have looked at their point to point, you'd have looked at their bumper runs or whatever they've done, whether it's on the track or between the flags, and you have a fair idea of the horse's ability. But then you can go and view the horses the day beforehand or on the day of the sale and just see what they're like as individuals physically. They could be they could have done the quickest time of the day in a point to point, but if they've got two wonky front legs, they mightn't stand too much training after that. So yeah, there's loads of variables. I was going to ask, you're looking for the bandy legs, and sometimes you're looking for the bandy legs because you might get a reduction on the price, but you still think they're great. Yeah, exactly. Like, in a very good kind of recent example of that is at Linkfield last week. There was a mare of Harry Fry's called Love Envoy. She was a Westerner mare who won her point to point for Sean Doyle. She went to the sales and she failed the vet on her wind, her breathing, and we managed to buy her for 38 grand. And she's unbeaten. She's won 3 hurdle races now. So like you said, you can just get that bit of value if there is a few flaws there and a few people are willing to accept them. Right,
so it's a high wire act though, because if you've got a horse that doesn't recover well from the wind operation, it's like, ooh, that was a bit of a risk.
Yeah, exactly. You hear the good stories, but as like every story, there's plenty of bad ones along the way as well. But like I said, that's the joys of it. Every horse is different, and there's no such thing as a perfect horse. So that's what kind of makes it kind of exciting, and kind of just trying to find that next gem. And are there many Irish horses at Cheltenham tomorrow on sale? Yeah, there's 40 lots, and I suppose a good 3/4 of them are Irish horses. Most of them kind of point-pointers or bumper horses, and there's a few English point-to-point horses in there as well. Okay, so it's a talent scout job that you're doing this weekend in particular. That means that you've got to spend hours and hours watching tape and making sure that you understand pedigree and what the ground was like on the day that a specific horse won a specific race, and what the other horses in that field were like. So you can't just go on results. It's a very multi-layered deep dive you've got to do on every single one of those lots, I suspect. Yeah, exactly. Like, some people would kind of think that agents or trainers or whoever's buying the horses, they just turn up the sales, put their hand up and buy a horse, bid and buy the horse. Whereas that's a very kind of naive way of looking at it. There's an awful lot of kind of homework and groundwork goes in behind the scenes, and you have to have all that done before you can bid on the horse, really. Before I come back to this in a bit more detail, I did want to ask you about an Irish bred horse that is obviously doing particularly well, that you'd be familiar with in Nicky Henderson's yard, and that's Shishkin. What's it actually like when you have a superstar like that in the yards in the build up to a race like the one against Energamine recently? What's the atmosphere like? What's the nervousness? What's the excitement like? And what's the balance? Yeah, I suppose like this day last week, everyone was kind of, really looking forward to the big clash of two real good 2-milers kind of our, of our generation at the moment, or of our last couple of seasons anyway. Like I said, there was a lot of nervous kind of energy around the place. Everyone was anticipating it. Thankfully, Shishkin had a brilliant preparation, whereas when he went to the Desert Orchid at Kempton at Christmas, that was not a rushed preparation, but it was, obviously we intended to go to Tingle Creek with him. That didn't happen. We had to give him a bit of easy time, and it was a fraction rush to get him back to Kempton at Christmas, and it was one of those, we wouldn't have been that surprised, or we wouldn't have been that upset if he got beaten at Christmas, because we knew he would have needed the run and he'd come on a lot for it. But thankfully he won there, and like I said, there was no excuses going into last Saturday at Ascot, and thankfully the race lived up to expectations, and it was just an incredible horse race. And like, it's one of those, I've nearly watched it back every day this week. Just it was just brilliant.
So how do you feel then when the two horses go over the last and you're a little bit behind? What's that like in the live environment? Are you thinking, well, look, we've no excuses, we're being beaten here by a much better horse? Or were you like, this is great, we have him exactly where we want him?
Yeah, like I was looking up, I was at Ascot last Saturday, and I was in in the stand, and I was literally just parallel with the winning line. And I know I'm not just saying this afterwards now, but like Shishkin, I was always not saying I was confident he was always going to win, but I knew he, like at home, he does all his best work at the end. He's never that flashy early on in a gallop, and he always really stays out probably better than most horses. And that's just the one thing I was clinging on to when the two of them went down to the last at Ascot on Saturday.
And the build up as well, we've been talking about it for ages. We were always kind of slightly worried that something's going to happen, or somebody will have a change of heart, and we might not get to see these two superstars go at each other in the middle of the season as it is right now. Were you always confident that the race was going to happen?
I suppose no is the honest answer. Literally we, like the Henderson camp, did not find out till 10 o'clock Thursday morning when declarations were done that Energumen was going to turn up. Obviously there were stories that he was going to turn up, then there were stories he wasn't going to turn up, and some people were probably hoping that they didn't turn up because they were hoping to have just a clash once at Cheltenham, and that would be a brilliant spectacle. But I think with hindsight, I think everyone is delighted the two of them turned up. It was an incredible horse race, and hopefully the horses have, Shishkin definitely has come out of it very well, and we can look forward to the build up and the second round at Cheltenham, hopefully. Well,
isn't that the thing? Because we talk again about this all the time, and Johnny, feel free to chip in, but like actually having these clashes now as opposed to just waiting for Cheltenham means that everybody's going to be interested in the rematch. It's like the big boxing prize fights we've seen in the heavyweights. We all wanted to see the two best heavyweights in the world, as we thought, fight for the last couple of years, and they haven't. And it's actually been to the detriment of the sport, whereas actually the two heavyweights went up against each other last week. Everybody talked about it in the build-up, everybody talked about it afterwards, everybody will talk about it again the next time round. And I understand if you're the owner of the losing horse, you're a little bit sore about it, perhaps, no doubt, and the connections will be a little bit sore about it, but that's sport.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And like you said there, I think we all get kind of monopolised around the fact that Cheltenham's the be-all and end-all. And I think last Saturday was a good example that it's not. There was, I think even the general public nearly watched the race last Saturday, because there was a very good build-up over here in England about the race and about the two superstars. And the fact that the race lived up to expectations and it wasn't very one-sided, and if Shishkin had unseated or fallen coming down the hill, we'd have all been devastated. We'd never have got the race we did in the end. But yeah, there was no excuses our end. It lived up to expectations, and thankfully we came out on top as well.
That's the thing as well, Ger, just that Cheltenham's been stretched to 4 days now, so you have to me it's kind of not quite the holy grail that it was, in the sense if they stretch it out, races are diluted a bit because they have more races. And for us to have a race like that in January, I just thought, I was writing about it today, Jerry, I honestly would have said it was one of the best races we've seen this century, let alone this year and this season, because it just had absolutely everything, and racing needs that, it needs that after the year it had.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose back to from the kind of horsemanship side of things, I love the fact that the two of them had kind of seasonal preps before, as in, they'd had a run under their belt as well. Neither of the two horses were coming into that race off it wasn't their first run. They'd both had, Energumen had run around Cork and Shishkin had run around Kempton. So, they were both fit. There was, they were both, ready to rock as such, and there was no excuses that they needed the run or anything like that, because some people were trying to compare it to Altior and Surname a few years ago, but that was Altior's first run of the season. He had a very hard race and things like that, whereas I just love the fact the two of them had runs beforehand, which I think was a big factor.
I'm sorry to call you a jockey who's retired, because this is only obviously a recent thing, but come with your jockey's hat on, what did you make of the two lads from basically from the top of the straight to the line? Because for me, it was just so fascinating. Paul Townend trying to hold on, knowing that his rival was going to come with the burst, and then Nico obviously trying to ensure that he got the last two fences at least relatively right, as opposed to like making a mistake that might cost him the race.
Yeah, I think, like I say, from Paul's point of view, I'd say he was just happy everywhere at every stage of the race. We weren't sure in the morning when we were having breakfast. We were just going through the race like Nico and the boss were, and we were just wondering whether David Bass would try annoy Energumen up the front and just kind of make him go a bit faster than he wanted to. But I think Paul did everything brilliantly. You know, he got the fractions right. He got a lovely jumping round the whole way round. You know, it was a brilliant race to watch, and I just love the way Energumen travelled through the race. You know, he probably just doesn't want as stiff a test of stamina as Shishkin does. You know, but even going down to the last, like, Paul made it spot on. You know, and he got a lovely jump, whereas Shishkin just got in a bit deep, and even though he jumped the well, he didn't fly it and land out the back of it flying, you know, and, you know, he just had to make up that bit more ground again, and I think what's made it even more impressive, really, you know.
And we had, like, obviously there was a great crowd at the Tayestes yesterday, and I'd say there was just a great buzz in Ascot for a clash like that, because, like, as a reference there, racing kind of did need that bit of good news as well.
Yeah, like, obviously just watching Goran yesterday on TV, like, the crowds were back there. It was incredible, and it's like, I've never been to Tayestes Day, but it's one day I'd love to go to, because it's just the atmosphere and camaraderie there looks you know, second to none.
I've never been either. We should make a plan to go next year, hell or high water, no matter what's going on, because it does look great, and the stories you hear about it are like it's a proper country festival, and we can all indulge our own inner cultures. Can I ask you about the because you're there obviously looking at horses. What's the history of Shishkin? Pardon my ignorance. I probably should know this, but obviously it was Irish bred. So how does he end up at Nicky Henderson's? What's that story?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's kind of a good story behind it. So he was bought as a foal for £40,000 or euros, one or the other, and then he was actually resold as a store as a 3-year-old for £26. So, like, the person who bought him as a foal lost money on him to a 3-year-old. You know, they kept him for 2 years and they took a hit. So he was bought by a woman called Virginia Considine, who she's actually she's a fellow Cork woman actually as well. She was I'd have known her when I was younger, and she bought her, and they ran it in a point the first day, and it got beat actually. I think they were very surprised. They really fancied it that day. And then it went out and won the next day. And after that, it went to the sales at Cheltenham, I think. Yeah, it must have been Cheltenham. And he made £170,000, which is an awful lot of money. But in grand scheme of things, what people are paying for horses now, he was relatively cheap. But yeah, and he's just done nothing but improve and physically develop and strengthen up, and he's gone from strength to strength. And, you know, he's always liked him from day one too, which is very important. I think, you know, when a trainer really likes a horse from day one, it does help.
When you're in the company of horses like that are progressive and brilliant, does it just change the feeling in the yard generally does it just make you, I guess it must make everything look like it's full of potential, because you're like, well, I mean, we have this superstar and they're giving him a little bit of a rattle when we're riding out. Like, it must change the atmosphere entirely when you have superstars like that just casually walking around the place.
Yeah, I suppose when you're involved in Seven Bows, you probably get a bit spoiled, because you rarely go a year without there being one or two superstars in the yard. But yes, we probably are a bit kind of spoiled as compared to some smaller yards, whereas when they come across a good horse, they probably really appreciate even more. Not that we don't, but they're probably just more of a commonplace in Seven Barrows. Like, he's just such a good trainer, and his record is unbelievable. So yeah, we probably get a bit spoiled and probably take it a bit for granted. But, like, he's a very straightforward horse. You wouldn't, you know, compared to Sprinter Sacre and Altior, you wouldn't pick him out in a string. You know, he's not the kind of the flashiest horse you'll ever see, but, you know, when you push the buttons on him and kind of do a bit more, he does come alive.
This is a good segue into your relationship with Nicky, and what was it? How did you end up there in the first place? Because you've been there a long time now.
Yeah, I suppose I came over to England in between, so I did the leaving cert, but in between 5th and 6th year, I came over to England, and I went. Brendan Powell Senior, he was training at the time. He's now assistant trainer in Joseph O'Brien's. But yeah, he was my first kind of boss, I suppose, as such, and he was a brilliant mentor. He really got me going. He gave me my first winner while I was still in school. I can remember riding my first winner, Newton Abbott, and I can remember literally I went home the next day to go into sixth year, and I did try to drag my feet a small bit and tried to miss my boat and thing home, but it got me home eventually anyway, and I did my leaving cert, and I even did an extra subject. I did agricultural science, and that wasn't hard work because I grew up in a dairy farm, but the worst thing about it is that when you're doing the exam for leaving cert ag science is one of the last ones, so
yeah.
It's nearly on the Saturday 2 weeks later or whatever, so it really just dragged it out. But so minute that the ag science was done, I think it was back on the boat again and back over to Lambourne, where I was at Brendan for a good kind of another 12-15 months, and then I moved. So Brendan got me in with one of the best agents around called Dave Roberts, and Dave rang me up one day saying that Nicky Henderson's looking for a conditional. Would I be interested? Well, he basically told me to go there right now. He said there's no two ways about it, just go, and I did, and I've been there ever since. Really, that was probably 12 years ago now.
Wow.
So it's been a long time, long association, and there's been plenty of ups and plenty of downs, but yeah, that's the joys of it.
We skipped over the bit there. You went to race, so you must have gone to race while you were still in school.
So I took transition year out, but the agreement was that I had to go back and do the leaving cert. And I was very lucky when I was in race. I was always a tall lad. I knew I was never going to be a flat jockey and stuff. So the lads in race were very kind, and they basically sat me down then and told me that, and I really listened. And in turn, they sent me to Dermot Wells, not to be an apprentice, because he wasn't looking for an apprentice at the time. So they were keen to send a few bigger lads there to just learn their trade a bit. And I promise it was a brilliant grounding. Mr. Well was incredible, and the staff he has there. And I'm actually still friends with some of the lads that are still working there now. And it was a great time in my life when I was young. And I was very naive, and I think it's very important to get steered in the right direction at that age, and not to kind of learn too many bad habits, and be pointed and guided in the right direction. And thankfully Mr. Weld and his team did that, and it really stood me in good stead. Quite
independent of spirit. So at 15 essentially you moved from your dairy farm in Cork to Kildare. I guess maybe you were going home at weekends and stuff, but you would have been living on your own really at 15.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose the other thing is I came from a horsey background, but I didn't come from a racing background, so I was literally learning. I know at that age you're still learning everything anyway, but I was really learning things from the bottom really enough. Like I knew my way around a horse, but when it came to racing, it was all new to me. And like I said, I wouldn't change any of it. It's been an incredible few years, and like I'm probably quoted saying it a few times now, but I lived my dream for 12-13 years, and I got paid to do it, and it's been incredible. So I've been very lucky.
And was going to race a spur of the moment thing, or like how did you even know it existed?
That was actually through Pony Club. So I can remember when I was in the Pony Club when I was younger, we went to went to Coolmore Stud, and we went to a few other places, and we went to race, went to the Curragh and things like that, and I didn't even know the place existed back then, and I'm sure I picked up a brochure or something like that, and I took it home, and I was always very keen about it, and I always loved the racing aspect of it, and I suppose I did it, and kind of just didn't think much would come of it. Believe it or not, I actually did. My parents did make me fill out a CAO as well. I was going
to say. So you're like, when you're 15, you're like, I'm just going to take the year off here and go off and become a jockey, and they're like, what? No way. But obviously they were like, fine, off you go.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the amount of people that said to me, like, and even my career advisor or career whatever they call them in school, like they said that I wasn't going to work, and there's no money in horses, and that I was too big to be a jockey, and but even plenty of friends and family were saying that there's no money in horses, and unless you're a vet or a farrier and things like that, but and they're probably right, they're dead right, but I still wouldn't change anything, that's for sure.
The words that Nicky said as well, just reading after your retirement, he's been a very special man to us. He's been in 7 bars a long time. He's part of the place. We really want him to remain here. We feel desperately sorry for him. And I know he wanted to go on a bit longer. He wasn't ready to retire just yet. It broke his heart not to be able to continue, because he's very good at it. He's a wonderful horseman and the nicest guy you'll ever come across. Such a team player. The owners loved him, and some would specifically ask for him to ride their horses. It must be really, really nice to hear something like that from a man and that is a legend of the game.
Yeah, I'd say they must have interviewed him late at night. I'd say that when they interviewed him about that, he was obviously after a nice bit of dinner and a a glass of red wine or something, because that's very no, very messy. No, he's brilliant. He's incredible. No, we've always had a good relationship. There's been a few cross words, but and plenty of better words as well. But that's what makes any relationship stronger. Is that when he did give me a bollocking or whatever, you turned in the next morning and you just got on with it, and that's what I loved about him. I think that's a very good sign of a boss and a character, when you can move on very quickly the next day.
We see your fellow Corkmen, we'll say Noel Feely and Davy Russell, riding to well beyond your retirement. But is it true that, given what happened on the all-weather that day, you gotta look at it as a glass half full, that you came out in one piece really, and be able to now go to Cheltenham and live a normal life?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Like I said, I'd love to have gone on another 5. Not saying I wanted to go into my 40s, but I'd love to have got another 5 or 6 years out of it, for sure. But prior to my fall, I was, physically I was in a good way. I'd plenty of previous injuries and stuff like that, but nothing that was hindering me. And I was really enjoying the riding, enjoying the whole aspect of it. And I suppose, I went to Lingfield that day, and it was jumpers, bumpers on the all-weather. You thought, let's go here. We're not going to have to jump. We don't have to leave the ground. I had 4 or 5 rides, and thought it was going to be kind of an easy payday. But just lo and behold, it wasn't to be, and just unfortunately the accident happened. But like I said, it was a freak accident, and it could have been an awful lot worse. And I'm not a fella to dwell on things, but I suppose the amount of people that said to me that I was lucky to walk out of it, and well, not that I walked out of Lingfield, but to walk away 6 or 7 months later, relatively, I have a little limp and small like that, but nothing major, that's for sure.
Did a horse fall on you? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so just I'll never forget, because I didn't. So it was one of those people said to me, "Oh, you must have been knocked out. You don't remember it." But I never lost consciousness, which some people say was a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, because the fact I didn't lose consciousness meant I didn't have a head injury, which was a positive. But the flip side of that then is that I remember everything, from when it actually happened, to being put in the ambulance and stuff like that, But so just the horse in front of us really just stopped quickly. We all came congested. My filly, she wasn't the biggest, and she's just clipped the horse's heel in front of her, and she's gone down. You're gone from going 30 miles an hour, 30 plus miles an hour, and all of a sudden you're rolling around the ground. And then horse landed on top of me then as well, and he probably just put the nail in the coffin with injuries wise, so it was just very unfortunate. And not to be recommended, that's for sure. And
all one side, a dislocated left hip and a dislocated left shoulder, and obviously some breaks as well.
Yeah, the hip came out the front. Oh no, the hip came out the back, and the shoulder came out the front. And obviously, as they dislocated, they fractured both joints as well. But to be fair, the hip has actually been okay. That hasn't been too bad. But the shoulder has just been problems from day one, really. The nerve damage that was done there was a lot worse than we kind of hoped or expected. And that's probably the main thing that's really held me back. And that from passing the doctor, from getting back, because your intention was to continue on. It wasn't like you had the accident and then decided, right, that's me done. Your intention was to get back. Yeah, geez, for sure. Yeah, I was rehabbed every day for I don't know how many weeks and months, and I started back riding out in September, and everything was going well. And I thought, you know what, I'll be back now, hopefully for middle of October, whatever like that. At the start of the national hunt season, and I was riding out about 3 or 4 weeks, I suppose, and then my bicep ruptured on my left arm, which is the shoulder that was damaged. They reckon it was probably damaged in the fall initially, and it literally collapsed. So I lost an awful lot of strength with that, and a lot of movement and range in the shoulder. And that was probably, I did leave it settle down for 3 or 4 weeks again. And then I started back riding out again, and I hit a wall progress wise. It just was making no progress. And so the surgeons, the doctors, they were all kind of, when I met him back in January, they were all kind of the opinion that they wouldn't be able to pass me to race ride again. So it was hard news to take, but I suppose in my own head, I knew before Christmas that like I said earlier, I just hit that wall of progress, and I was in trouble. I was going to ask, so when somebody says it to you, it's final, and if you don't know it's coming, it can be crushing and heartbreak, and I'm sure it's crushing and heartbreak anyway, but actually if you do know in your own head that you weren't going to be able to get back to the level you were at, does that somehow make it easier for you to make peace with that? Yeah, I suppose, like I said, I thought I'd kind of, because I popped home to Ireland down to Cork for Christmas, and obviously I told my parents and stuff at that stage that what the surgeons had said, and I thought in my own head I was okay with it. And then last Monday when it kind of released that I'd when it came out and was official, when it's written in print in front of you, and when it really did hit home. I suppose you kind of lose your identity to a point. Like all my friends in school, or people I was friendly with in school, or even my nieces and nephews, they all know me as a jockey. And then when you're not that you're a different person, but you nearly get a new identity, which it took me a few days to get my head around it. And of course the phone then was very busy, and people were they were congratulating me on my retirement, and I didn't know if it was congratulations or I was just it was mentally, it was very draining the last kind of 10 days. But like I said, it was one of those things that if people weren't messaging and talking to you, it would have been probably worse.
Well, there's that old adage about sports people, they die twice, once when their career ends and once when they die like the rest of us. But listening to what Nicky Henderson said, it was like he said that you practically know the breeding of every single horse in the UK, and I don't know if you already had something in your head about what you were going to do after this, or was that not really something that you were thinking about until the injury happened, and then all of a sudden you did actually have the opportunity to go, I've got all this knowledge, I should be using it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I've always been big into my bloodstock, the trading of it, whether it's buying foals and selling them at stores, or buying pointers for people to train and for a few owners and stuff. And I've always liked that side of it, but it was always only ever part-time, and I was never depending on it. So it was kind of not a bit of fun because it's serious stuff, but I was just doing it kind of leisurely. And then obviously when I knew, I suppose when I got injured last January, they kind of, in my own head, I even thought I was going to be back for Cheltenham. I thought I was going to be back for the Grand National. That didn't work out. And then I kind of thought to myself, this is going to be a long haul. I better start laying a few foundations for the next chapter, I suppose. Even though I was still coming back and everything at that stage, I said, while I'm off, I might as well kind of, make as much hay as I can while I'm not having to go racing and things like that. I can study the form a bit stronger and do more work with the sales and pre-sales and stuff. And so I suppose I set down a good kind of foundation, and then I kind of got approached around Christmas time from Goffs about going to work for them. And obviously this was after I'd got the news from my surgeons and my specialist, my doctor. And I suppose timing wise things have worked out well that way. And obviously not the retirement wasn't planned, obviously, but the fact that a good job opportunity came up at the right time for a very, very good company that I'm really looking forward to. So I suppose that's kind of timed itself fairly well, and like I said, I'm excited for the next chapter. So
will you be able to work with Goffs and also with Nicky Henderson at the same time, or is it a kind of a one or the other thing?
No, so it's going to be kind of both of them, really. I suppose a lot of Nicky's work is done early in the mornings. I can be finishing Nicky's for 9 o'clock. And then I'll be based in Lambourne, just outside Lambourne, with the Goffs job. I'll be kind of like the southern representative. So I'll be in the office, probably most days a week, or else traveling around to meet clients and inspect horses and get horses kind of looked at for sales, and just building good clientele and kind of customer relations for Goffs' company.
One of the good things about being Irish is that we do death fairly well. We like to have a party and a wake at the same time, and a celebration. Are you feeling a little bit of celebration about the incredible career that you managed to put together and the serendipity of all the decisions you made? And are you still kind of mourning the identity that you've lost? It's only been a week, so I might be rushing this question.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I suppose we're all just kind of out of a lockdown at the moment, so I don't want to be guilty of being a COVID spreader or anything like that if we throw a party. But I know we'll do something. I'm at the sales today and tomorrow, and I'm actually going on holiday then with my girlfriend Charlotte on Saturday, Sunday night for 6 nights, 5-6 nights. So really looking forward to that break where we can just kind of, really kind of chill out and down tools for a good week.
It was interesting as well. You said that the year off had kind of weaned you off it as well, which I thought was an interesting word that you have. It's not something that's been thrust upon you overnight, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't. I actually got a good response to that kind of comment, and I didn't really mean it. Like I didn't, it wasn't one of those things I didn't put much thought into it when I said it, and the amount of people that commented on it, and kind of, I think a lot of, especially lads, even other jockeys kind of related to it very easily, and I was kind of surprised the reaction I got to it. I suppose, because there is, that race riding adrenaline, that buzz, you can't replicate it. Like I love buying horses, and I get a great buzz at the sales when you're bidding on a horse and there's someone bidding against you, and you know you're getting close to your limit of your budget, and but I get a great buzz from that. But you can't replicate the race riding buzz, the buzz of winning. I love riding horses. I love riding horses at home. I love schooling horses over hurdles and fences, but you can't replicate that, in the moment in a race, and just the fact that I suppose, like I said, I haven't had that now for it's just over 12 months. I do think that's probably made things a bit easier. It's one of those, I think if I had come back and I had to retire 2 months later or something like that, it'd be a different story, because you'd have got that kind of hit back. Like I said, I've never done drugs in my life, but it's fairly common knowledge that, race riding, it is a drug to most of us. We don't do much else, adrenaline wise. So yeah, I suppose, like I said, when I made that comment, I didn't think anything of it, but like I said, I've had great kind of response from it. A lot of people have kind of they felt the association with it.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing about when you talk about the identity and losing the identity, the other thing that you lose is that adrenaline, and a lot of sports people then go looking for the rest of their life to try and find it. Brian O'Driscoll did an interview with Henry Shefflin where he said the most difficult thing for him at the end was that it was unlikely he was ever going to be world class at what came next. Now, it's not impossible, and it's not the end of anything, but just, he said that was the hardest thing initially to come to terms with, and then eventually you make peace with it and you go on, and you can look back and really enjoy the fact that you had that in the first place. So I guess that's it. It's like, whatever your career is next, you just have to make an accommodation that you had that time, which was sensational, and what comes next is going to be a different pace.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose I'm very lucky in the sense that a lot of lads, when they retire from race riding or professional sports or whichever it is, they don't really have plan B. Like, obviously some sports people don't have to have a second career because they've earned enough money through their first career or whatever, but as jockeys we have to have a second career. There's no, unless you're the Frankies, the Tories, Ryan Moores, you need to have a second career. And a lot of people don't plan for that, and I'm not saying I did, but just the fact that bloodstock was such a big kind of interest of mine and such a key kind of interest, I suppose. I've probably been lucky. I dipped my toe a small bit while I was still riding, and I really enjoyed it, and hopefully I can seamlessly move into the next career and I don't have too much downtime. But a lot of people struggle mentally, and then all of a sudden you're struggling financially because they're not working or not finding what's right for them. So I think I've been very lucky in that sense. And like the other thing is, you have to remember too, bloodstock, it runs side by side with racing and race riding. So it's not as if I'm gone from being a jockey to driving a lorry or doing something totally different. It all runs, it all coincides, and I still kind of socialise and see the same people in the same circles. So it's not as if you're going into a totally different career, Well,
and also there's a world-class yard that you're in every day that have horses in the biggest races of the year, and it would be remiss of me to let you go without asking you about John Bon as well. What's the crack there? What's the rest of the season looking like, and what are your own hopes and expectations?
Obviously, like Henderson's, we're like what I said earlier about being a bit spoiled. Like, it's incredible the strength and depth we have of novice hurdlers this year, bearing in mind, like Nicky, he didn't have one runner in a novice hurdle at Cheltenham last year. And I think that's another good sign of the trainer. He could have run a few horses if he wanted to, but they weren't going to be good enough. So what was the point? We've this, like amongst jockeys, we've this famous saying that, owners and trainers love using. They'll say, oh, let's go for the day out. But from a jockey's point of view, there's nothing worse than riding around Cheltenham when you're on a horse that has no chance, because first of all, they're going too fast for you. Second of all, you're probably getting in someone else's way. And third of all, it's not, you'd prefer nearly to be at Huntington with a few chances than you would be at Cheltenham with no hopers. But yeah, so Nicky's spoiled this year with the strength and depth he has in novice hurdlers. Obviously we've got John Bon, Constitution Hill for the 2 mile. Supreme, we've got we're going to have another Balco Coastal who runs in the grade 2 at Cheltenham tomorrow. He goes for hopefully the Ballymore. Hopefully he can get the job done tomorrow and then move on to Cheltenham. Walking on Air, a horse owned by the Tabers, who won at Newbury last week on seasonal debut over hurdles. He'll hopefully have another run before going to Cheltenham. So yeah, like I say, we're kind of spoiled this year with the strength and depth we have. Hopefully Champ can win tomorrow before going on to the World Hurdle. Classical Dream was a bit disappointing yesterday. So hopefully that could just make Champ, strengthen his credentials for the World Hurdle if he goes down that route, which he probably will. And then Chantry House, who runs tomorrow as well, in the 3-mile race. And if he runs well tomorrow and wins, or runs very well, he'll be aimed and lined up for the Gold Cup.
In an alternate universe, then, who does your last ever ride? God says, I'm going to give you one more ride in the Supreme Novice Hurdle in 2022. Who do you ride?
I suppose I've been a massive fan of the horse the whole way through from day one, from the minute he set foot in the yard, and it'd have to be Constitution Hill. His mentality, his brain, his everything is just so, if you could design a horse's mental strength, you'd have him. He's just so relaxed. You work him in the mornings, he comes alive. He walks home from the gallop like an old handicapper. He's got a brilliant brain. He's very talented. If he puts in a clear round, he'll be coming up the hill with a brilliant chance. If something beats him, they beat him because they're better than him on the day. But he will give his 100%, and I just think he's a solid horse, and I think he deserves to be favoured for the Supreme. We'll
let you go, Jerry. Do you think you're going to be buying anything over the next couple of days?
Hopefully, there's a few nice horses in the sale. There's plenty of horses with good form, and hopefully we might just get one or two bought tomorrow night. Well, listen, congratulations on a great career, and I hope the holiday goes really well for you, and whatever comes next, we wish you the very best. Thanks a million for joining us. That's great, lads. Thank you very much for having me. It's Jerry McGrath there, who has just recently announced his retirement from racing, as he said, but obviously has a brilliant second career ahead of him, and potentially a career in the media if he wanted to, no doubt. If you want to get in touch with us this evening, you can text us 53106 during the day. You can WhatsApp us 0879 180 180. This is Friday Night Racing. Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. You can follow the Twitter account at HRI Racing, and the hashtag is every racing moment.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Welcome. You're very welcome back to Friday Night Racing. Before the break there, we were talking with Jerry McGrath. The Nicky Henderson yard, when he's just reading off the names there, Johnny, it's an impressive group of horses he has. I can't see last year's figures where Ireland trash England being replicated this year.
No, I don't think Ireland winning 23 races at Cheltenham is good for anyone, to be honest with you. I really do mean that. I think it might have been something of an outlier, but at the same time, that was the domination that Ireland had. And, I mentioned Nicky Henderson not running the novice over hurdles at the festival last season. It's unbelievable, the cyclical nature of, but two hot pots for the Supreme essentially at the moment, and I think that's great. I think that the Supreme is shaping up to be an unbelievable race, and we need Nicky Henderson, Paul Nicholls and these trainers. I think for the good of the game, we need them to have good horses. Paul Nicholls has gone down the route maybe of buying horses a bit early in their life now to I guess to challenge the hegemony of the Irish point-to-pointers staying in Ireland and so forth. But Nicky just has a very good team. I'm not that familiar with Jerry McGrath in terms of I've never spoken to him before, but like you referenced there, I think he's just an extremely good talker. He's clearly no one-trick pony in terms of being a jockey or whatever, and he was a good jockey, very good horseman, but he could have a career doing many things, I think, in racing going forward, and the positive attitude, I think, is a sight to behold. And he referenced there that Nicky likes a good dinner, and maybe he had a good dinner when he said those nice things about him, but he's plenty of reasons to be very happy.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. Your line just broke up there at the end, but I think anybody who was listening to that will be pretty impressed with just even also the matter of fact description of the injuries. The hip went one way and the shoulder went the other, and then I was absolutely certain he was coming back. He said ultimately in the piece that you referenced earlier that the bicep was the issue with connected to the shoulder nerve damage, where he has Popeye syndrome, where the bicep is perpetually flexed. Stuff that you never hear about or know about or fully understand, and then many of these jockeys recover from injuries like this and end up in the race, and the public don't really fully understand the sacrifices that these humans make to get race fit and to be able to do this job, where we're sitting there on the couch in many instances or at the races, pint in hand, watching this going, sure, look.
I know, and like as a journalist, like the thing the thing that you're most fearful of as a journalist is libel or doing something that'll get you in trouble in terms of saying something that could land you legally in trouble or will cost you money or whatever. And what I found is that if you ever flirt with trouble, it's when you don't expect it at all. So when you're doing a story that you think like, okay, I got to be very careful here, basically you're not going to make a mistake because you're so kind of in tune with the dangers. And if you ever do make a mistake, it's usually something trivial, that's like an article that you didn't even think was anyway important or something like that, from my perspective anyway. And in his case, he went for 4 rides on the all-weather and he called it money for jam. He thought, like, this is a lad who rides over fences that go to 40 miles an hour. And here he's like, I'm basically schooling horses on the all-weather here. And then it happens. So that's racing.
Yeah, exactly. A reminder, Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. You can share every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or visit Horse Racing Ireland follow Horse Racing Ireland on social media. It says here, Johnny is really starting to show off now. He's cracked the top 1,000 or top 3% in the overall Tote 10 to follow leaderboard. He also maintains a healthy 130-point lead over his nearest rival, Danny Mullins, in the Off the Ball League. Can he carry his dominance through next weekend's Dublin Racing Festival, which will feature 2 bonus point races, the Irish Champion Hurdle and, of course, the Irish Gold Cup? The Tote Jackpot is available on racing at Fairyhouse and Nace this weekend, and you can play with Tote at races or on tote.ie. So you're doing all right, Johnny. You've made a
top 3
strong recovery. Top 3%. Top 1,000.
It's all right.
It's not bad at all. Anything this weekend that you're looking at specifically?
Yeah, it's quiet enough. Obviously, as you referenced there, Cheltenham, the Cotswold Chase there with Chantry House run. Cheltenham is a good card. It's fairly quiet in Ireland. Decent racing in Nace and Sunday. It's all building up to next Sunday, crowds back at Leopardstown. Next Saturday and Sunday, crowds back at Leopardstown. It's going to be a brilliant Dublin Racing Festival. And we'll give it a proper preview next week. All
right, Johnny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, Ger.
That's this week's episode of Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. We'll see you next Friday across all of OTB's social channels from 3 o'clock, or you can hear us on the radio at 8.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.